you're 3 hours into a hike, your bottle's empty, and you remember the survival show trick. Dig a hole, throw in a plastic sheet, wait for the sun to do the work. Here's the harsh truth. That trick, the one that's been on television for 20 years, will get you about a cup of water a day. In the same amount of time, doing something completely different, you could pull out several liters. You've been taught the wrong method, not because someone lied to you maliciously, but because the wrong method is more visually dramatic for TV. Today, I'm giving you the 4 techniques trackers, geologists, and desert survival instructors actually use, and I'm showing you the math on why the famous one fails. Let's do the physics, because the numbers don't lie even when television does. A standard survival solar still is a hole about 1 meter wide, lined with a plastic sheet with a cup in the center and a rock weighing down the middle of the sheet. Sunlight heats the soil, and moisture evaporates, hits the cool plastic, condenses, and drips into your cup. The idea is sound. The yield is the problem. Field tests conducted by wilderness survival researchers, including the well-documented trials referenced by survival writer Doug Ritter's Equipped to Survive project, consistently found that a below-ground solar still in average soil produces somewhere between 100 milliliters and half a liter per day. In genuinely dry desert soil, some tests recorded barely enough to wet your lips. Compare that to the sweat cost. Digging a knee-deep hole in hard-packed earth in the heat without a shovel can cost you more water and perspiration than the still will produce in 24 hours. You're running a deficit dressed up as a solution. The still isn't a hoax. It's a real technique that belongs in one specific scenario. You are stranded in one place for days, then you have 0 other water sources, and you have unlimited time and no better options. As a first response to thirst, it's the least efficient method on this list. Now let's cover the 4 that actually work, ranked by how fast they pay off. Moat 1. Read the land. Not the sky water runs downhill and collects in the lowest, most obvious terrain features. Before you dig or build anything, walk the landscape, look for a sudden strip of green vegetation cutting through otherwise dry or brown terrain. Then, that green line is almost always tracing a dry riverbed, called an arroyo or wash. Water sits underneath the surface at the outside bend of that dry bed, at the lowest point, because that's where the current would have carved deepest when it last ran. Dig there, 12 to 18 inches down, and you'll often hit damp sand before you hit standing water. This is documented survival technique going back to the U.S. Army Survival Manual, FM 2176, and is still taught in modern courses, Mates 2. Follow the animals, especially at dawn, and dusk grain-eating birds like doves and finches need to drink daily and fly toward water at first light and just before sunset, usually in a fast, direct, low flight path. Watch their flight lines and follow the direction they're heading in the morning or the direction they're coming from in the evening. Converging game trails work the same way. When multiple animal paths funnel into a single, well-worn trail, then that trail is frequently leading to a water source. Because prey and predator alike center their territory around it, bees are an even tighter signal. A honeybee's flight range from its hive is roughly 2 to 3 miles, and they need water to regulate hive temperature and dilute honey. A steady bee flight line is a strong indicator you are within a couple of miles of a reliable source, at 3. The transpiration bag, the solar still's better cousin, this is the technique that should have gotten the TV airtime. Tie a clear plastic bag around a leafy, living tree branch, ideally one that gets full sun, with a small rock inside the bag to weigh down a low corner as a collection point. The physics. Living plants constantly release water vapor through their leaves, a process called transpiration, at a far higher rate than damp soil evaporates. Then, the bag traps that vapor, the sun heats the air inside, and water condenses on the plastic and drips to the low point. Field measurements from Bushcraft instructors, including tests documented in Dave Canterbury's Bushcraft 101, commonly show a single well-placed bag producing close to a liter over a full sunny day, several times what a below-ground still produces for a fraction of the labor, Mach 4. Dew harvesting at first light in grassland. Dew often coats vegetation heavily in the hour before and after sunrise, before the sun burns it off. Tie clean, absorbent cloth or bundled long grass around your ankles and walk through dew-heavy fields, then wring the cloth into a container. This method has been used historically in genuinely arid environments, including documented practices in the Atacama and Namib deserts, where fog harvesting nets are now used industrially for the same underlying principle. Cool surfaces condense atmospheric moisture even in extreme dryness. A single dew collection walk through wet grass can realistically fill a liter container in 20 to 30 minutes, a return on investment no digging technique can match. Before you commit to any water gathering method, ask one question: does this method cost me more water and effort than it returns? Digging in hard, dry soil under direct sun for a still, high cost, low return, use only as an absolute last resort. Walking to a green vegetation line, a converging game trail, or tying a bag on a branch. Near zero cost, moderate to high return. If a technique requires heavy digging and takes over an hour before you see a single drop, that's your signal you're using the theatrical version of survival, not the functional one. Skip the shovel. Prioritize in this order. Scan for green vegetation lines in otherwise dry terrain. That's your dry riverbed indicator. Watch bird flight paths at dawn and dusk. Bag a sunny, leafy branch with any clear plastic you're carrying, a produce bag, a rain poncho corner, even a snack wrapper in a pinch. Collect dew off grass at first light with any spare cloth, a bandana, or even spare socks. None of this requires special gear. It requires reading terrain and timing, which is exactly the skill the dig a hole trick trains you to skip. Always treat any wild water source before drinking. Boiling for 1 minute, a portable filter, or purification tablets. Since none of these collection methods sterilize water, the solar still isn't a scam. It's just a television special effect that became folklore. It photographs well. It teaches poorly. The real skill isn't digging, it's reading the land, watching the animals, and understanding basic physics well enough to know which method actually pays you back. If this saved you from wasting a day's water budget on the wrong technique, subscribe for more practical science. See you next time.